Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We're continuing to work through my TBR list, and this week's book is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I like to do two parts to every review video I make. The first being the synopsis and the spoiler-free review for the book, and this is for the people who haven't read the book yet and want to know what I think and whether I'd recommend the book or not. The second part goes more in depth about what I loved and what I didn't love, so this is more for the people who have read the book, so that part actually usually contains spoilers. So let's start off first with the synopsis of the book. The Inheritance Games follows Avery Grams as she mysteriously becomes the recipient of Tobias Hawthorne's entire estate, while his daughters and grandsons get nothing. But even though she's set to inherit billions from Tobias, the will has a stipulation where she has to live at Hawthorne House with the rest of the family for at least a year. Avery then gets caught up in a game set by Tobias Hawthorne for her and his grandsons as they try to figure out why Avery was chosen to be the heir to the estate and not them. So let's get on to my spoiler-free review. This book was amazing. So I was actually on vacation when I started reading the book, and I had to physically force myself to stop reading because we had places to be. But oh my goodness, I love the book so much. So this is a mystery book, but it doesn't focus on murder, which is interesting because most mystery books I read focus on murders and unsolved cases and stuff like that. But this one focuses more on the mystery as to why Avery was chosen to be the heir to Tobias's estate, and also focuses more on the secrets of the Hawthorne family, particularly the Hawthorne brothers. So I thought that was just really interesting, and it kept me engaged and captivated by the story by posing questions, answering some of them, and then posing even more questions. In doing that, the mystery is enhanced and built upon, and it feels complex. It also gives the reader a chance to form their own theories about how the story would go. I kept going on the notes app on my phone while I was reading because I was so hooked and I had so many questions. Then when I was done reading the book, I was going back and looking at my notes, and I noticed while some had been answered, some were only half answered. It frustrated me, but also left me wanting for more. Plus, the ending of the book, it's actually a good thing. I held off reading the book until now, so that way I don't have to wait too long for the sequel, which by the way I had already pre-ordered long before I even read the book. The characters were also incredibly well written. Avery was a likable protagonist, and I didn't find myself annoyed with her, and I was rooting for her from the beginning. She's intelligent because of all the games she and her mom had played while she was growing up, so it makes sense that she's capable of playing along with one of Tobias's games. She's snarky and sarcastic and keeps to herself for the most part, but for a good reason. And she's worried too, but you can't blame her because of how rough her life had been. Avery isn't passive either. She doesn't just react to things happening to her, she also does something about it. She's assertive, and she's clearly capable and smart, and she's not a flat character. The same goes for the Hawthorne brothers. They could have very easily been practically the same person but with different names and very slight variations between them, but they're not. Each Hawthorne brother has a distinct personality, and they're fleshed out. There's also still a lot of backstory left to explore with each of them, which I am hoping we get in the sequel. Overall, I totally recommend this book. It drew me in because I was expecting a Knives Out kind of vibe based on the summary. Not only did I get that, but I also got vibes similar to the film Rebecca and even a little bit of Ready or Not. So if those movies were your cup of tea and you love a good mystery read that's not lackluster or boring, please read The Inheritance Games. I promise you won't regret it. So that was my spoiler-free review. Now to get into the specifics of what I loved and didn't love. This contains spoilers, so if you haven't read the book yet or you haven't finished reading it yet, please proceed with caution in this part of the video. The first thing I absolutely loved, the opening line. The book opens with these lines. When I was a kid, my mom constantly invented games. The quiet game, the who can make their cookie last longer game. A perennial favorite, the marshmallow game, involved eating marshmallows while wearing puffy Goodwill jackets indoors to avoid turning on the heat. The flashlight game was what we played when the electricity went out. We never walked anywhere, we raced. The floor was nearly always lava. The primary purpose of pillows was building forts. So ever since I read Maureen Johnson's Truly Devious trilogy, I now have a thing for noticing opening lines and like thinking a lot about them. And the opening lines for the Inheritance games connects really well to one of the motifs as well as the title of the book, which is games. It's just really cool because it also like intrigued me enough to keep reading. And now for the first thing I didn't like about the book, the first person perspective. Honestly, as soon as I saw the first person perspective, I was ready to close the book. But the opening line kept me going. And I'll admit, this first person perspective wasn't too bad. There wasn't too much usage of the word I, and it was easy to follow along. I really do wish that it could have been like told in like a third person perspective, or similar to Karen M. McManus's One of Us is Lying, where the story used first person perspective, but it's told from 4 different characters' point of view, with each chapter being dedicated to a different character's point of view. It really would have given more of an insight into the Hawthorne brothers as well, and I would really like have loved to get into their minds. So I'm going to do an alternating thing with what I loved and what I didn't love. So it's like an Oreo of praise and criticism. So for another thing I did love, the Toby Hawthorne twist. What I loved about it was that the story did give hints that Toby wasn't confirmed to be that dead, even though like he was dead for all intents and purposes. So he wasn't really dead. And having Harry, the homeless guy that Avery was playing chess with at the beginning of the book, be revealed as the long-lost Toby Hawthorne, my mind was blown. I know a lot of people caught on to that pretty quickly, but that doesn't mean it's like a weak writing choice. I still think that like, there's a lot you could do with this bombshell twist, and I'm excited to see how they would explore it in the sequel. And now for another thing I didn't like. The love triangle between Avery, Jameson, and Grayson. It's just a personal preference, but I don't really like love triangles, and I'm not really rooting for her to like end up with a particular Hawthorne brother either. Really, I'd say she's better off not ending up with either one of them. But I won't deny that the build-up, the writing of the build-up of her relationship with each of them was well written. But in all seriousness, I ship the Hawthorne brothers with therapy, especially after the Emily Lachlan stuff that went down between Grayson and Jameson. They don't need another love triangle between them and Avery. These boys need therapy. Badly. Going off of that point then, the final thing I loved about the book was actually how different Avery's dynamic was with each Hawthorne. Nash is like Nash is almost like an older brother figure, and Xander, aka the best Hawthorne brother in my opinion, definitely felt more like a younger brother to Avery. Then of course she's got the attraction to Grayson and Jameson. With Grayson, it was an attraction that kind of built up over time, and then with Jameson it was like a first sight kind of thing. But yeah, the dynamic she had with each Hawthorne brother was different, and I loved it. And finally, for the thing that I didn't hate, but I didn't love either, the explanation as to why Tobias chose Avery as the heir to his estate. So we found out that they did have an encounter once when Avery was 6, and only had one conversation, yet he kept tabs on her since then. I hope that we get more of an explanation as to why he did so in the sequel, because this explanation felt kind of rushed and not really fleshed out enough, especially since you discover this like near the end of the book and right before the Toby Hawthorne twist. So overall, this book did have its ups and downs, but I really think that the good stuff outweighed the bad stuff. Mainly because the stuff I didn't like could be resolved by or even like fleshed out in the sequel. I am super pumped to read The Hawthorne Legacy, which comes out in a few days. In the meantime, catch me rereading Inheritance Games because it's honestly like that good. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you've already read the book, or like let me know who your favorite Hawthorne brother is. And that's a wrap on my review on the Inheritance Games. I am starting classes next week, so video updates would be a bit more sporadic until April. So tune in 2 weeks for my review on Shang-Chi, which is perfect timing because the spoiler ban would be lifted by then. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe.